There is one force in the universe that keeps good and evil in perfect balance. It is called the Tree of Mana. But a magic sword has tricked a young warrior into upsetting the balance, spreading evil throughout the land. Thus, the warrior must undertake a dangerous journey to find the seeds of the mana tree, which has been hidden for centuries. Only then can perfect harmony be restored. In this incredible adventure, things are not as they seem. It's a world turned upside down that you must help the warrior make right. And the only way to succeed is to solve the secret of mana. And that really awful, just flat out awful back of the box is for Secret of Mana, an action RPG from Squaresoft, released in 1993, also known as Seiken Densetsu 2, and it's part of the Mana/Seiken Densetsu franchise. The first game being Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy. I had this game when I was a kid. I played it, absolutely loved it. It was one of the first games I bought on my Wii Virtual Console when I got my Wii, and played it and loved it. And there is a Let's Play currently going on at LowBiasGaming and over at lowbiasgaming.net of this game. It was published by Square, now Square Enix, of course. It's the sequel to Seiken Densetsu, which we talked about as Final Fantasy Adventure, and Europe got it as Mystic Quest. It was the first title to be marketed as part of the Mana series rather than Final Fantasy. High fantasy universe, 3 heroes as they attempt to prevent an empire from conquering the world with the power of an ancient flying fortress. No tricky swords here. Rather than using turn-based battle systems, it uses real-time battle with a power bar mechanic. It has the unique ring command menu system, which we saw in Secret of Evermore not too long ago. Pauses the action, allows you to make decisions mid-battle. There is a co-op multiplayer system that allowed a second or third player to drop in and out of the game at any time. It was designed and directed by Koichi Ishii, programmed by Nasser Gebeli, who Nasser's done amazing work, and produced by veteran Square designer Hiromichi Tanaka. Had considerable acclaim for its brightly colored graphics, expansive plot, the ring command system, innovative real-time battles. They praised the soundtrack by Hiroki Kikuta and the customizable AI settings for the computer-controlled allies. Original was released for the Virtual Console in 2008 and the Wii U on 2013. It was ported to mobile phones in Japan in 2009. An enhanced port was released for iOS in 2010 and Android in 2014. It was included in the collection of Mana release for the Switch in Japan in 2017 and America in 2019. Nintendo re-released Secret of Mana in 2017 as part of the Super NES Classic Edition, and a full 3D make was released on PS4, Vita, and Windows in 2018, and that one is terrible. So we got, all of that. There's a ton about this game. There's a huge bit about development. Again, just to keep these from being like 30 minutes long, we're keeping these brief. So look up anything that you feel like looking up. The game's battle system, according to Tanaka, had first been considered for Final Fantasy IV. Similarly, unused features of Mana were appropriated for Chrono Trigger, which, like FF4, was in production at the time. According to Tanaka, the project was originally intended to be Final Fantasy IV with a more action-based dynamic overworld. However, it wound up not being Final Fantasy IV anymore, but became a separate project, codenamed Chrono Trigger, during development, before finally becoming Seiken Densetsu 2. Tanaka said it always felt like a sequel to Final Fantasy III for him. So, Secret of Mana, the second in the Seiken Densetsu game, was supposed to be Final Fantasy IV, and then Chrono Trigger, and then ended up Secret of Mana. Which is fine with me, because then we still got Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. Was originally planned to be launched for a launch title for the SNES CD add-on. After the contract between Nintendo and Sony to produce the add-on failed, Sony repurposed it, of course, became the PlayStation. We all know that. Square went back to the SNES cartridge format, so it had to be altered to fit the storage capacity of the cartridge. They resisted continuing the project without the CD add-on, believing too much of the game would have to be cut, but they were overruled by management. As a result of the hardware change, several features did have to be cut, and some completely needed to be done completely. One of the most significant changes was the removal of the option to take multiple routes through the game that led to several possible endings, in contrast to the linear journey in the final product. The plot that remained was different, and Tanaka said the original story had a much darker tone. Ishii has estimated that up to 40% of the game was dropped to meet the space limitations, and critics have suggested that the hardware change led to technical problems when too much happens at once in the game. In 2006, Level claimed that Secret of Mana's rocky development was Square's main inspiration to move their games from the Nintendo consoles to the Sony consoles. The English translation was completed in only 30 days, mere weeks after the Japanese release. The North American localization was initially advertised as Final Fantasy Adventure 2. Critics suggested the translation was done hastily so the game could reach North America for the '93 holiday season. According to Ted Woosley, a large portion was cut out due to space limitations. To display text on the main gameplay screen, the English translation used a fixed-width font, which limits the amount of space available to display text, and Woosley wasn't happy that he had to trim conversations to the bare essentials and that he had so little time for the translation, commenting that it nearly killed me. The script was difficult to translate as well, as it presented Woosley in disordered groups of text like shuffling a novel. Other localizations were done in German and French. The Japanese release only named the 3 protagonists in the manual, and the Western versions omitted the character name until the enhanced iOS port. According to Square Enix, as of February 2004, Secret of Mana shipped 1.83 million copies worldwide, with 1.5 of those being shipped in Japan and 330,000 abroad. The abroad figure is challenged by Next Generation, who claim that the game sold over 500,000 copies in the US alone. Initial shipment of games in Japan sold out within days of the release date. Edge noted in November 1993 that the game was the most widely covered game of the year in Japan with a high number of sales, but was released in North America completely unhyped and mostly unheard of. Despite this, it went on to become the second best-selling Super NES game on Babbage's North American chart in '93, behind only Mortal Kombat. According to Next Generation, it was surprisingly popular for a role-playing game, contributing to the genre's growing popularity in the West. EGM heavily praised the graphics, music, and multiplayer gameplay, saying that it had some of the best music I've ever heard from a cartridge. They hope the other companies would take the game's lead in adding multiplayer roles to RPGs. Die Hard Games fans review named the multiplayer as the game's best component. Reviewer Kelly Rickard saying that while the graphics were nice, the multiplayer made the game. GamePro's review praised the graphics, plot, first-rate gameplay, and positively massive world, dwarfing even Zelda, while stating the gameplay and multiplayer were rough around the edges, concluding it to be one of the finest action RPGs on the Super Nintendo. Nintendo Power called it an enthralling epic, praising the wide variety of sights and terrain, music, beautiful graphics, and great depth of play, but criticizing the unnecessarily long sword powering up and the awkward item selection method. I never really played it multiplayer. The friends I did have didn't like playing RPGs, so I pretty much always played this one solo. Game Rankings gave the Super Nintendo version an 87, Nintendo Power a 3.9 out of 5, ONM gave it a 93. That's all that I have for specific Super Nintendo rankings. Overall, though, this game usually gets an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10, perfect score kind of thing. Like I said, I love the game. I think the graphics are great. I think the music is fantastic. I think the gameplay is fine. That guy complaining about the sword charge up thing, well, it does take a little while, yeah, but just don't do it. You don't have to. There's no reason. You do not have to. It's fine.